Good afternoon. I hope you are having fun. I was listening earlier to the declutter message, so I thought, better take my jacket off. And then I realized that my thing has a red at the back, which matches with you see. So it all just really worked out. My name is Vusi Thembekwayo. We're together for the next 45 minutes, and I hope it's going to feel for you like 5. The great part about my job is that they've paid me already. So this is a dual collaboration you must enjoy. If you don't, it's the same for me. You see, it's oh dear, oh dear. I will speak about the message you're seeing on screen, this radical idea that what got you here won't get you there. Now, whilst I enjoy speaker intros, I do tend to find them quite serious. So if you'd allow me maybe just to break some ice and present a bit of a human side of me. This is Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad met in the year 1965. They were 10 when they met. It's 20 years before I was born. For purpose of clarity, this is not a picture of Mom and Dad at 10. It's a picture of Mom and Dad that I like. There is invariably some finance person going, yeah, his dad doesn't look 10. That doesn't. I come from Benoni. Anybody here from Benoni? Let's get a quick sense. It's not your fault. Very good. Where in Benoni are you from, ma'am? She's from Faramir. Very good. So you're from Benoni. I'm from Benoni. Similar, but not the same. Faramir is where we came in 94. Remember, we came there. Don't you love this country? I love this country so much. So I got to tell you, for those of you who don't know, in Benoni there is a suburb called Lakefield. It is what you might say, it's like the Santon of Benoni. Like if you have like uber amounts of money and you stay in Benoni, which you wouldn't do, but if you did, you'd stay in Lakefield. So the story goes, as you drive into Lakefield, there's this beautiful mezzanine sort of wall with water running over it. And the one time I went to visit my mother and my son and daughter was sitting in the back. So my son sees the wall and says, Daddy, why is there water running on that? I said, oh, my boy, they were trying to make sure we didn't come. He didn't get it because he's a kid. And then my wife looked at me because she gets sensitive when I talk about this stuff. And then I said, but we came anyway. We still came. We just. One of the things I hope you will enjoy as I present here today, and maybe it's just a point for me to get off the bat as a bit of a disclaimer. I love my country. I really do. I've had the privilege of living in 5 countries. I've worked in 19. Just this year alone, I've been to the US, to the UK. I've just come back from Brazil. I'll probably do 20 countries this year. I wouldn't be anywhere else but here. But I think as South Africans, we really have to learn to get over ourselves. We're different, and that's okay. I'm not sure when it became a crime for us to laugh at each other about the things that make us different. Like when did it not become okay to tease someone? Because it is in finding the humor about what it is that makes them different that enables us almost to connect what it is that is human, isn't it? And so I will attempt whilst I'm up here to try and bridge that gap because I think, as I said earlier, we've gone way, way too far. Let me also just say, often, I don't know if you know the story, ma'am, about why Benoni is called Benoni. So I'm a student of anthropology. I love the study of genesis of things, so finding out where things come from and why they are where they are and why they are what they are. So I went and looked up why Benoni is called Benoni. It turns out the first people to settle in Benoni were Jewish people for whom the native language is Hebrew. Those of us in the Christian proclivity would know that in the Bible there is a fellow called Benjamin. Benjamin is a Hebrew word. It means son of my strength. Its antithesis, that is to say, its equal and exact opposite, is Ben-Oni, which means son of my suffering. Benoni. Right? So I wondered to myself, why would they call it son of my suffering? And then I realized Benoni is right in the middle of Boksbeek and Brakpan, guys. It was rough for us. In fact, I remember when I was growing up in Benoni, we used to have a joke. When is the only time a white man is smiling and winking at a black man? Oh boy. You see why they pay up front. It's all downhill now. It's all downhill. White people, don't make that joke. Don't. Save yourself. This is me as a young lad winning the world championship in public speaking for the first time. The lady next to me, Mrs. Buchanan, trained me for 4 years to winning the world championship the first time. Then I worked with Petty Kramer, who's my trainer now, to win it the second time. I'm not that dark. I think the picture's just poorly formatted. No, I'm really not. The flash wasn't working that night. The camera was racist. If you can't see me, look for the teeth. Top left of the picture. So this just to say that I'm a 2-time world champion public speaker, as my mom said I should say here. I'm really good, very good. Thank you, thank you. Let's move on. So shall we get back then to this idea, this radical idea, this thought that what got you here won't get you there, and perhaps to start it and predicate it with a singular question, and the question is this. Who amongst us here thinks it's possible that you could have 2 companies operating in a single market, selling the same commodity to the same customers, been around for the same length of time, they have exactly the same strategies, they hire people that went to the same schools. If you read their AFSs, you realize that in fact, they have very similar trading tactics as well. And yet, over an identical period, the one company outperforms the other, and I mean by a mile. Hands up if you think it's possible. Hands up if you don't. Well, of course you think it's possible. What do you think business is? You think we're here just for fun? The very construct of business, economic enterprise, first designed in the 1680s specifically, this idea that we can all call together and converge for a single thing. You know where the word organization comes from? It was an organized civilization. It was a group of people who came together using shareholder capital to deliver better value. The fact that you wake up every single day, go into the same markets with your competitors, is predicated on the belief that you think and believe with the same set of odds, the same trading advantage, and in truth, similar products, you can deliver superior returns than your competitors do. That's all the business is. Yeah, we mask it in fluff stuff, well-trained people, then mask it in big MBA and CFA talk. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. You take a rand from a shareholder, and you want to return it at a rand plus X. If we agree on this, and my argument is here that we should, let's base ourselves, if we can then, I'll come back to this in a minute. Let's base ourselves, if we can then, in looking at some empirical evidence and data. One of the things I hope we will come to understand as I present over the next few minutes is this thing called the 10,000-hour fallacy. I had the privilege of speaking at a conference. The first time, in fact, I spoke ever at a conference in New York was 4 years ago. And I was speaking at this conference called WOBI. It's this thing called World of Business International. It's like a TED, but for business people. And so speaking the morning after me was Jack Welch, who I'm sure you all know. And there was a long, illustrious list of speakers. And so I get to the conference, and if you don't know, speakers tend to be creatures of ego, ergo. And so I get to the conference, and I'm told that I'm the penultimate speaker. Now, if you're a speaker of any decent quality, you want 2 spots in the program. They're called the anchor spots, open or close, because nobody remembers the people in the middle. I'm not sure why they've got me on this spot, but it's fine. It's fine. So anyway, I get to this conference, I'm told I'm penultimate, which means there's somebody speaking after me. So I go to the conference organizer, say, hi, my name is Vusi. She says, hi. I said, do you know who I am? She says, yeah, your name's on the I said, no. I mean, do you know who I am? Do you know how far? Do you know where I come from? When I land at the airport, they go, Vusi. How are you putting me penultimate on the program? How dare you? Who dare speak after me? Who has the unmitigating temerity, the tenacity, the gall, the audacity to speak after the great Vusi Thembekwayo? And she says, Malcolm Gladwell. I said, sure, carry on, no problem. It's really not a problem. One of the greatest thinkers, perhaps, of our modern day, Malcolm Gladwell. And he wrote a book called Outliers, phenomenal book. I've read it probably cover to cover maybe 10 times. And in this book, he argues a single principle, which is, if you want to join the top 1% of a group of people in the practice of a skill or craft, You have to practice for 10,000 hours or more. So you want to become a great violinist, as my son does? 10,000 hours. You want to become a great soccer player? 10,000 hours. Great ballerina? 10,000 hours. And the rule is true, but, and there's a small little but. It's based on the assumption that the set of rules that hold the game don't change. So why is Serena Williams, without question, the most powerful tennis player we've seen ever in the sport of tennis? Simple. Serena Williams has done her 10,000 hours in tennis over and over and over again. In fact, if you ever played a game of tennis with Serena, I don't know if you know this, but at her peak, she can serve a ball in your direction at 147 kilometers per hour. Now, what that means is you'd be standing on the adjacent end. You'd be bobbing from side to side. I don't know why they do that, but they do. And you'd be holding your tennis racket. And all you would hear is, shoo. And you'd still be waiting, right? She's phenomenal. Why is Lionel Messi the greatest soccer player of our generation? I think Cristiano's great, but you can't argue the skill level of Lionel Messi with Cristiano Ronaldo. Simple. The soccer game has been the same way for the past 600 years. The ball is round, the playing circuit is square or rectangular, and the penalty is still 18 inches from the start spot. Those rules haven't changed. FIFA in 2017 is still arguing about whether or not they can introduce goal line technology. Just think about that. In the game of tennis, this has been the layout of a tennis court for 200 years of tennis history. The biggest change they saw was in 1986 when the WTA, World Tennis Association, published a circular. The circular read that it used to hold in tennis that as you play the game, when you serve, you have to keep one foot on the ground. They said, now you can serve and lift both feet. Unbelievable! How do you deal with this kind of change? Here we have to deal with Zuma. Anyway, I can say that I'm Zulu. Yeah. So the point here is that the game of tennis has been the game of tennis since the game of tennis has been the game of tennis. Not much has changed. If you want to understand particularly what separates great organizations from mediocre ones, it's important to start with this thing called the context. Context is very simply why great organizations believe they exist in the first place. You see, mediocre organizations exist for this thing called market share, and I'll explain it in a minute. Does anyone here know why the company and the name Ox Baron is significant in our conversation here today? Any person? It's interesting that you're all shaking your heads, because if I'd asked this question perhaps 200 years ago, thereabout, it would be like asking you who is Apple today. Ox Baron, at the turn of the century before last, specifically around 1889, we're taught in the theory of finance, was the world's largest company by turnover. In 1889, they were a $125 million US business. I want you to just think about that. 125 million US dollars. I mean, if you assume the 10-to-1 exchange rate between the rand and the dollar, we're talking over $1 billion here. No head office, no conference, no CRM, no management structure, no operations, no HR, no team building. Definitely no team building. No complex systems, no IT, no SAP, no meetings, no balance scorecard, just a group of people running around getting receipts and bringing them back into the office. And they were a $125 million business. What did they do? They made these things called ox wagon wheels, and here's what made them great. See, in the Midwestern Americas, they had a specific problem. The ox wagon wheel used to rot. Why? Because wood is a living, breathing substance. In the Midwest, if you've ever been, you notice that the temperatures in summer can soar above 40, in winter drop below freezing. Wood, a living, breathing substance moving in an environment of extreme temperatures, tends to shorten its lifespan. But the actual insight here was the ox wagon wheel was bolted into the ox wagon using a wooden nut. Wood rubbing on wood even shortens the lifespan even farther. And so they bought a tiny little company called Lawrence Mass & Sons, and this small little business based in Denver used to make wheel nuts out of steel and later aluminum. And because they made their wheels out of steel and aluminum nuts, their wheels lasted longer, their customers bought them more, they accumulated market share, and then their competitors couldn't compete, so they started buying from them this thing called vertical integration. And because they started buying from them, they became the world's largest company in a dominant mode of moving, which was ox wagon wheels. But times change, right? Consumers change, markets change. The turn of the century comes. The combustion engine is invented. The combustion engine fuels the Model T by Henry Ford. What does he do? He then says we want to put a car in every single home in the United States. He changes, by the way, the whole way we move goods, him and the railway industry. This company battling for survival realizes that their market has changed, so they hire a young man. His name is 23. This is around the 1920s now. And they say to him, we'd like you to help us with our business and our problem. And his job was head of innovation. In 1923, head of innovation. And he went and ran the innovation office, and 6 months later, he marches into the boardroom of Oxbaron, and he says to them, I've figured out what the problem is, but even better, I know what the solution is. He says, the problem is we've spent 80 years in our business getting really good at something that in 20 years, no one's going to need. He says, if we don't change and change now, we're going to be in serious trouble. Then he says, but I know what we should change to. And this thing that we should change to is a mode of transport, a type of wheel that uses polyethylene, steel, rubber, and plastic. They didn't listen. They thought he was a bit of a madman. The literature says they parted ways. Today we know it means they fired him. And he left, went home, and he raised what we today call venture funding. Back then it was called family, friends, and fools. They gave him a little bit of money, not the biggie, to go and start his own business. And to prototype the idea, he built a bicycle. And on the wheels of the bicycle, he prototyped the very first type of wheel that was ever made in this format. His name was Jeremy Boyd. His last name was Dunlop. He created Dunlop tires, today the world's third largest producer of tires. In fact, were it not for Jeremy Boyd, there is argument about whether or not we would even be using tires today. Point? When we think about market share in business, we often miss the point. You see, this thing here is an MGG, right? There's a couple of these. There's a Logitech, there's a Perfect Q. All they do is effectively the same stuff. They plug it into my computer, I click a button, and it moves. It makes me look really slick. Makes you think you're getting your money's worth. But if I were to ask what is the market share of the company that has produced this fantastic product, it would depend on how many other companies make exactly the same product in it. The deeper question is, what purpose does this thing do? Because if I ask what is the purpose share, the answer there is different. So most of you here deal in very competitive markets where people are trying to plan their estates, plan their lives, create a little bit of wealth, build legacies for their families. That is the purpose for what we do. We can always argue market share based on product, but the purpose is the purpose. What do I think is the single biggest thing that is a consideration for those of you in this room to think about? How many of you here have clients that are holding investments in blockchain technology, particularly in any Bitcoin or bitmaps? I hold some. None of you? I spend a week a month in London and here, and I can tell you that we're probably about 5, maybe 6 years, but it'll come. And what's happening there is this amazing move of people to try and move money into blockchain spaces, specifically on bit type of currencies. So I move my money at a 1-to-1, and when I get it back, there are no fees. And often when the currency appreciates, I'm not paying an arbitrage person on the other end. And so a lot of people are beginning to look at that as an alternative form of saying, how else do I create wealth? Now, it'll take a long time before it filters into your own environment. By the time it does, you're all here very well-qualified, smart people. You would have created a product that can service that market. But it's always important to think about what are the alternatives, what is the market share, and what is our purpose share. I love sharing this example, so if you'll allow me. In our company, we have the privilege of doing work for the world's largest producer of condoms. You all know them. You're at conference. They're called It's a joke! I wrote it at the back. I thought it would work. I did. It's a joke. Come on. It's this interesting little company called Durax. Started as a German company named after the great man Durazzo himself. And then, of course, much later on, the Americans who bought it decided that the name didn't sound cool, so they turned it into Durax. They make 59 million condoms, they do, a month. And they only have 21% of the global market share. 59 million condoms. I said to them, where are they going? Because I've got to move. I'm leaving. If I find out where they're, I'm leaving. They wouldn't tell me where it's going. What they did tell me is they have one container with 6 flavors that gets shipped to Nkandla. We don't know where. No, stop. We don't know where. We don't know for whom. They didn't give me the P.O. box address. One container, 6 flavors. Don't you love these high-grade jokes? I love it. So anyway. So over there doing some work with Durex, and Durex is a very interesting problem. So 21% of the global market share, they're doing really well, and they go, so our world and our business is shaped in the physical construct. And if you think about it, it actually makes sense. Durex is only a physical manifestation product. You don't need it on a digital life. Wait, do you? Just the way you love, do you? Because you don't need it on Facebook unless there's something you want to tell us. Let's take it offline. So anyway, so Durex goes, but the world is becoming increasingly online. People are taking their lives increasingly online. What would it look like if our product existed in the online space? Just think about that. And a single question they had to ask themselves was based on this. You see, on the internet, there are a few things you can do and can't do. On the internet, you can evoke the sense of sight, which means on a WhatsApp call or a Skype call, I can see you. I can evoke the sense of audio. I can hear you. What I cannot yet do is I cannot taste, nor can I touch or smell. But Durex says, what would happen if you could? What would happen if I could reach over an IP address and touch you in your studio? And you enjoyed it. Because you would. So I got to tell you, so they sent us, myself and my business partners. My business partner's name is Christian Foster. He's a CISI, and he's from Bloemfontein. So I say this to him all the time. I said, you know, Christian, you are from Bloemfontein, which means just because of that, you already qualify, you are previously disadvantaged. You don't have to prove anything. And then you are white male, which means you are also now presently disadvantaged. So when we apply for a BE, you must score twice, right? So anyway, so they sent myself and Christian. We were doing some balance sheet, some capital restructure work for them. And now, in fact, in our enterprise development fund, they're busy putting some money with us. And I said to them, just make sure it's safe money. They've agreed. But so they sent us over to their facility in Australia, New South Wales. Met the guy whose video you've just watched, Ben Moore, South African, went to Pretoria, boys, would you believe it? Wanted to start a tech company here in South Africa. There was no funding. He left, went to live in the UK. By chance, found himself a little job. And then he moved to Australia. And now he runs the entire innovation facility for all of Durex. Phenomenal story, right? So anyway, got to meet Ben, and Ben says, boys, let's have a chat about it. He says, I'm going to give you guys a pair, South Africans, don't tell. So he gave myself and Christian a pair for free. Look, not for each other, but we got a pair. No. So came home, and you know, my wife, God bless her, we've been together 8 going 9 years now. Went to my wife and I said, baby, you know, my wife, by the way, does get quite perturbed at my rate of travel. So I said, you know, we have issues of mutual concern. I'd like to believe I can address those issues. And then I introduced it as you would a Speaker of Parliament, and she loved it. And then a fortnight later, I was traveling. I can't remember where I was going. And I called her up and I said, baby, let's try. She says, yeah. Hey, it works. Ha. I mean, they've got some issues with how it handles lubrication, but that's a different story. That's not moisturizer. It's a joke. The question, by the way, is Durex is saying 59 million condoms they make a month. They'd like by the year 2020 to start making 1 million of these a month. 1 million of these. And just think about what that does, right? It moves the entire market and how you and I engage in things about intimacy. So they've asked themselves the question not only market share, but purpose share. And the broader question, I can't answer it for you, but the broader question for you to ask yourself is every single day when you come to work and you do what you do, what is the purpose for which you do what you do? And if the organization has a specific purpose and our job is to drive for that, then what is my share in making sure that that organization achieves it? And that's a personal question that only you can answer. The second question we found around great organizations was this thing called culture. And what we found is that organizations that tend to be average embrace what we call a passion culture. And I know you use this word. Many people love this word. I'll explain it in a minute. Whereas great organizations use this thing we call an obsessive culture. Now, the thing about the word passion, and it is an emotive statement I'm about to make here, but it is true. If you were sitting in this conference 20, 30 years ago, having a conversation about how you're competing in your markets, and someone came up here and said, guys, if we want to beat our competitors, actually all we have to do is be passionate, you would beat your competitors. Because then nobody was talking about passion. Nobody was connecting the emotive reason with which we come to work to how we enable ourselves to deliver for our clients. I've had the privilege of working with you and all of your competitors. And I can tell you now that at every single one of their conferences, they're all saying the way they're going to beat you out of your market is if they are passionate. So the point here is if you're passionate, you're average now. This is how it's done by everybody. What we mean when we say passion, I think, is we mean obsessed. We mean a group of people that are willing to get it done because it needs to get done. Not because it goes into a scorecard or HR might find out about it or I get measured on it at the end of the quarter, but if it's going to make a difference in the life of the customer, an impact in the life of the organization, I'm going to get it done. And there is no better place for us to see that than in this great sport called Formula One. So I was sharing with some of the guys at the back. I had the privilege 2 years ago of racing Mika Hakkinen. And how it actually came about is Johnny Walker Global approached me and asked me if I would race an F1 driver for charity. I said, as long as the charity is the Vusi Thembekwayo bank account, no problema, comadre. And after we negotiated, it took about 3 months to negotiate, and after we negotiated, they said, well, here's the thing. It's a wager. So the wager is going to be the F1 driver has a specific car that he loves. If you beat him, you keep the car. And it's got this beautiful 1963 Mercedes SL. It's a 230, it's a straight six engine. This thing is stunning. Beautiful silver on the outside, blue interior. It is beautiful with a blue drop top. Stunning. He's been through 3 divorces, he's kept the car. Point is, he doesn't want to lose this car. So I got to race Mika Hakkinen. And at the time, I had to come within 5 seconds of Mika's time, and I came within 5.100th of a second of his time. I just missed it. But in that whole time, I spent about 2 months training to race him, and eventually we raced at Kyalami. He arrived not having been through Kyalami, not since 1991, he said. He jogged the course, and the following morning went out and just thrashed it. But when we were doing this, I had to learn about the importance of this thing called the pit, because when you watch an F1 race, all of us here know who Nico Rosberg is, right? We all know who Michael Schumacher is, or Mika Hakkinen. We all know who Lewis Hamilton is. But who of us here know who was the chief engineer in the Ferrari team when Michael Schumacher won his second F1 championship? Who was the head of analytics when Nico Rosberg just won his championships? What we forget is, we see the people front of house, there is an entire group of people who enabled him to achieve. So no better place is there for us to see it than this thing called the pit. What happens in the pit? Simply this. The car pulls in on one end, pulls out on the other. At the time at which it pulls in and stops, it gets lifted 4 inches, about yay high. They remove all 4 tires, put on new 4 tires. They'll check the driver, check oil, check water, check oil temperature and water pressure. Then they'll drop the car again and the car goes. Now in 1950, the fastest pit time was 4 minutes, 39 seconds. The F1 fans should know that that sounds ridiculous. 4 minutes, 39 seconds. It sounds ridiculous by today's standards, but how many of you here can change all 4 of your tires in 4 minutes, 39 seconds? Yeah, not so ridiculous now, is it? It's hard when I tell people to say this, one, to imagine it, and then first to believe it. You watch the car getting pitted in the year 1950. What stands out to you about the video image you've just seen? It's in color. It's in color. This was such a technological advancement. It was an engineering marvel that they used color film to record it. It's the equivalent of Elon Musk's Hyperloop in today's terms. It was way ahead of its time. Let's imagine this team was passionate. They would have improved, sure. They would have gone maybe from, let's say, I don't know, 4 minutes, 39 seconds to 40 seconds today. That's 10 seconds a tire. That's sub 1 minute to change 4 tires. We would have all sat here and thought, that's an amazing result. I want to show you how fast they did it in 2013. My favorite team, Ferrari, was the fastest in 2013. That's why I choose 2013. We haven't been the fastest since. In 2013, they changed all 4 tires. The car gets lifted 4 inches. They change 4 tires to check the driver's okay. They clean his visor. They check the water temperature, oil pressure, as well as the amount of fuel. Then they drop the car, and the car goes in 3 seconds. I know. It's insane, right? I could spend 2 hours running you through what you've just seen, but very simply this. All teams operate as a center of excellence. In the middle of each team, you have this guy called the anchor who trains for 7 years to operate a hydraulically powered drill. The drill has to be hydraulically powered because there's fuel there, and if it's electrically charged, you might spark something. The car comes in. You saw guys come into the front and the back of the car. They push this thing called a jack, and they wrench the car 4 inches. The jack is built of carbon fiber, which means if they push it in too far and the car hasn't stopped yet, the jack will break. The jack costs about $90 million US. In the current season of F1 we've just come from, McLaren broke their jack 4 times. You do the numbers. Car comes in, gets wrenched 4 inches. Once it's wrenched 4 inches, the anchor in the center of the team goes on his knees. He removes the bolt. He waits a second. He puts the bolt back on and he steps back. That's his job. He doesn't go, "Zrrt, are you ready?" Really, are you ready? Because I'm emailing HR, please. So he goes on his knees. He goes, "Zrrt," he waits, "Zrrt," he puts it back. In that single instance where he simply removes the bolt, what they call the retriever on his left will remove the tire, right? The receiver on his right will put on the new tire, and he'll put the bolt back on. But none of them worry about whether or not the other person has done their job. They take it everybody has done their job, because when they're building in a team environment, it's about setting each other up for success, not about whether or not you're meeting your performance quotas. Setting each other up for success. And then there is a single part of the video, I wish we could go back, but it played the video incorrectly. There is a single part of the video that nobody ever pays attention to, which is the team leader, highest paid member of the team. He stands at the back, holds a tablet, standing on a pedestal. And this pedestal has got 2 electric chargers that are connected to the jack. The jack, the minute they put it under the car, electrically connects to the power source. When the car gets lifted 4 inches, what did you hear? Did you hear anything anomalous? You heard the engine. So the minute the car is 4 inches, the driver is taught, the minute the car is lifted, put your foot in the accelerator. So the car's going, zzzz. You all here drive, you know what happens when you put your foot to the accelerator. The engine generates power, and through the transmission sends the power to the wheel, and the wheels move. That's how it works. Why was he taught to put the foot in the accelerator? Simple. Because when the car drops, there is no first gear K53 8-point check. When it lands, it goes. Kind of what I wish our politicians would do sometimes, right? So you saw the car lifted. Now, what does a team leader do? He stands there holding this tablet. Nobody knows what he does. He's like the CEO or the divisional leader. No one knows. He's the business unit manager. He goes to meetings, he calls conferences, he does nice talks, he shows nice slides. That's a joke, by the way. So here's what he does. His job is to make the call. The single thing nobody ever pays attention to. I had an interesting conversation once with a friend of mine who's a mentor. And I asked him a question. I said, what's the difference between management and leadership? And he said to me, management is having this much time, this much information to make a decision with that much impact. Leadership is having that much time, that much information to make a decision with this much impact. That's why so few people are willing to lead. So what does he do? He stands there, and once he thinks the team has done their job, he presses a little green push notification on his tablet, which sends a charge into the jacks, which will drop the car, and the car will go. The point here is, if he does it too soon and one of the wheels is not wrenched in correctly, he's going to have a problem. In fact, it happened 7 years ago when Lotus was still racing. The car dropped too soon, and as it pulled out, 4 laps later, the front left tire went, it catapulted, and almost killed the driver. And that's why so few people are willing to lead. Let's go and talk a bit about customer experience now, cognizant of time, and I just want to say thank you to the tech team at the back, because I saw them quite frazzled when the video was playing. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit now about customer experience. I love these 2 words, but I also hate these 2 words, and I'll tell you why. I come from the old school of business. When I started in sales, trained in finance, but I started in sales. And I understood customer service. I knew what it meant. It meant I had to visit my customers ever so often. And if they were ever unhappy, I had to take it down and give it to somebody who could do something about it. And I was effectively the go-between between the operations delivering the product we sold and the customer staying and paying with us. I got that. Then we got a little bit more complex, and we introduced these things called call centers. And some of my customers got a number they could phone if they were unhappy or needed more information. No problema, comadre. And then we started talking about this thing called customer experience. And I said, wait, what is this now? And how do I control the customer experience? So in our firm, we looked for what we think is probably the archetypal model for building customer experience. And it's a question that I'd like for you to ask yourself around where you fare. We found that if you want to build a great customer experience that is amazing, consistent, and keeps customers happy all the time, you've got to tick 4 of these boxes, all 4 of them. Here's the trick. We've not yet found anyone that does. So the idea isn't that you're going to do it. It is that you're aware of it and that you at the very least attempt it. The first box around how do we create an amazing customer experience is to make sure that what we offer our customers is relevant. And the most important words here is make sure that the experience is personalized and meaningful. Underline that word, personalized. Of course, some of the legislation is being introduced into your environment around how you issue advice and whether you're pricing the product, commission, and advice is going to change what this means, specifically around making sure we offer customers things that are relevant. But this relevance thing is really, really difficult. And the best way for you to think about it is how many of you here have this thing called a bank account? Let's see quickly. Anyone here with a bank account? The rest of you work for the Guptas, I take it. Yeah, if you ever have this thing called a bank account, it's very interesting because what happens is you get a job, and it's labor law in this country, by the way. It's very few countries that have this. But the labor laws in this country say that the minute you are formally employed, you must be paid into a bank account. You actually can't be paid cash. That's not allowed by law. So what happens is you go to the bank and you say to them, may I please have an account? They say, sure. We need you to prove we need you to prove to us that you are who you are. And they ask you for a set of documents entailed in this thing, legislation called FICA. A part of the documents they give you is personal information. They ask you for your ID, etc., etc. So you go home, you find a proof of address. It takes you 2 weeks to find a proof of address because it always does. No one ever has a water and lights bill lying around. And 2 weeks later, you come back to the bank. You say, see, I told you I am Vusi Thembekwayo. They say, great, here's a bank account. 2 months later, because you now work for Momentum, you're minting it. You're minting it. So 2 months later, you go to the bank, you say, hey, bank, you seen what I'm earning? I'm 200% up from what I was earning in my previous job. Listen, I think I qualify for a credit card. They say, fantastic. No problem. We've got this form you've got to fill in. It's called personal information. And we need you to bring us a set of documents to prove that you are who you are. So what do? You go and look for another rates and electricity's bill. You come in and you give them, and you fill in this personal information, part of which is telling them how much you earn and how much you spend, which is interesting because they're your bank. Shouldn't they know that? 3 months later, you go to the bank. You say, bank, listen, I saw this car. Oh, I've got to have it. They say, sure, no problem. You qualify. We've just got a form that you need to fill in. It's called a personal information. So just fill in this form for us. And then we've got this other one you need to form. It's an affordability test. It tells us how much you earn, how much you spend. You go, but you're my bank. 6 months later, you go to the bank. Say, bank, I'm moving. I've been living in a 1-bed, no bath. Don't ask me how that happens. I'm moving. I've found myself the real spot now. I'd like to move. And I've seen the house. They say, absolutely, no problem. You qualify. There's just this form you've got to fill in. It's called a personal information. And then on it, you've got to fill in. Does this sound familiar? Why do you think that happens? And by the way, South African banks are working very hard to change that, to their credit. Here's the reason it happens. It's because they're not sharing information or data. Right? So there's information or data sitting in the data center for credit card that doesn't get shared with people at home loans, which doesn't get shared with people at vehicle and asset finance, doesn't get shared with personal loans. It just doesn't get shared across. So whereas they should have a single view of who you are as a customer, what you actually don't know is you are 17 different people depending on who you talk to and what the data tells them. Now, you and I as customer-facing people can change this only if we personalize an experience for each and every single customer. The second thing is make sure that what we offer is convenient. And what does that mean? Give the customer choice, not too much it confuses him. Give it to him when he needs it, this little thing called timeliness, but most importantly, be consistent. The consistency test, I think, is the single most important one. And here's the point here. When you're inconsistently good, that is to say, there is huge volatility in your customer delivery, the customer doesn't judge you on how good you are when you are, or how poor you are when you're not. They actually judge you on how wide this gap is. I've not yet in many years seen people complaining about waiting in a queue at Home Affairs. Why? Because when you go, you expect to wait in a queue at Home Affairs. They have consistently told you that they will not give you short queues. So you are not surprised when you go and there's a long queue, right? The consistency test is what's really important. Third, be reliable. Whatever promise you make to the customer, you keep. Careful with your word, careful with your brand promise. And fourth and finally, be responsive. I've got some terrible news for the chaps in the room. Ladies are much better at this than we are. I have scientific evidence to prove it. Scientific. Told you 8 years married, going on 9 years. My wife and I have worked out, have had 88 arguments. Here's how I know. We have an argument a month. We never argue in December. That's a good month. I know that too because we've got 2 kids both conceived in December. Scientific evidence. Of the 88 arguments we've had, my wife and I, how many do you think I've won? Not a single one. I thought, so I listed, I thought about it, how many arguments we've had. Then I went to her and I said, I don't recall ever winning an argument. She says, no, you don't. Would you explain this thing to me? And then it hit me that men and women argue differently. You see, for us ladies, the argument starts now. If we argue now the argument starts. For the ladies, it started 2 weeks ago. You just weren't in it. She archived the emails, she saved the images. She's been waiting for this moment. And now she's going to let you have it. Right? She's going to let you have it. I see Mo coming up to me. Mo, I need, if I may, 3 minutes to conclude. Is that okay? So what have I done? Told you a bit about culture of great organizations. I've told you about this thing called context, and then I want to end with this thing called enablers. And what is enablers? Enablers is essentially the stuff that pulls it all together. It's the enabling functions that pulls it all together. And think about it this way. The great organization, the great team, the great people that achieve results is like the roof of the home. It's the archetypal result that we all see. The roof sits on a set of things that hold it there, which is the pillars, the stuff I've shared with you. Context, I've shared with you culture. We didn't have an opportunity to go into leadership as well as products. But we found that in all great teams and all great organizations, there is a set of laws that holds it together, a set of fundamentals, if you would, like the foundation. And we call those the 4 laws. Why? Because like Christian says, he says, Vusi, tell them that if you go to the top floor at the Carlton Center, floor number 68, then you somewhere stand there at the edge, look down at the streets and up at the skies of South Africa. And then you pray and say, God, I don't believe in gravity. And jump. You're going to see your poo-poo. He said it, not me. Those were his words. Why? Because gravity believes in you. Gravity doesn't need you to agree that it exists, isn't it? It is what it is. So what are these 4 laws of great organizations? And I want you to ask yourself as an individual whether or not you live by this. Law number 1 is to find the truth, not our version of the truth, the truth. I got the privilege of interviewing Raymond Ackerman once. So I asked him, I said, Raymond, and by the way, by now he'd insisted that I call him Uncle Raymond. Don't ask me why. So I said to him, Uncle Raymond, why do you think Pick n Pay was great when you ran it? And then when you didn't, it wasn't. Someone could argue, and plausibly, you were a bad leader, right? And he took a moment to think, and he said, well, you see, young Vusi, he calls me young Vusi, he says, when I ran Pick n Pay in my day, I spent a day a week in my stores talking to my customers and my cashiers, finding the truth. I said, I'm sorry, Uncle Raymond, but that sounds a bit salacious. In large, complex organizations, you get these things called reports. There is an inventory report, a financial report, a debtor's report. There are all sorts of reports. You can just pull a report from the system. And then he said, what brings me to this point. He says, every single report you can ever pull from any computer is a version of the truth. It's a lens. Hey guys, we've grown 20%. Why? Marketing says because we've got a great brand. Sales says because we're phenomenal at distribution. Operations says because we deliver all the time. Finance says because we're ensuring capital adequacy. And legal says we're not sure. We'll give you an opinion in 2 weeks. So finding the truth is about reaching the single conclusion to every question. Law number 2, difficult for me as a man of color to admit, but it's true. Size, it turns out, isn't everything. Yeah. Not that size is important. Shoe size, very important. It turns out the aim of great organizations is actually to be the best at what they do, not the biggest. You know, it's interesting. Best might give you biggest. Biggest doesn't mean best. Isn't that interesting? And perhaps to test it, because it's a controversial point, hands up if you have ever had a Nokia phone. Quickly, let's get a sense. Hands up if you have one today. Is your hand up? We need to talk. Come see me after this. There's a charity that you can donate it to. What made Nokia great? QWERTY keyboard, right? And the screen, the aggregated communication management system. Nokia was the best. Most of you had your hands up if you ever owned a Nokia. How many of you here knew who the Nokia CEO was? What their share price was? Market capitalization. How many of you here cared? Yeah, here's a controversial point, if you'll allow me. It turns out your customers don't care if you're successful or not. It only turns out they care if you're significant in their lives. If you're not, so what? And so the biggest mistake we make often in business is to assume that our customers actually care. They really, oftentimes they don't. You know it too, because we battle with this world of customer loyalty, right? So, what killed Nokia? BlackBerry. Hands up if you ever had a BlackBerry. Hands up if you have one now. Ma'am, you need Jesus. BlackBerry was great. Slightly better QWERTY keyboard, better aggregate communication management system, phenomenal communication interface. They built the first version of what we have today, this idea of communicating over an IP protocol. First it was called Research in Motion. Today you have WeChat and WhatsApp. They started that whole story. But what happened to them? They got left behind. They went from best to biggest. They started staying big for the purpose of staying big. Who walked in? Apple, with a single bit of design logic. You know what the design logic was? Why does the phone need a keyboard in the first place? Yeah, because a keyboard is wasted real estate. Half the time I'm on my phone, I don't need it. So why don't I have a keyboard that's there when I need it and not when I don't? My mom's retired. I know because she now phones every day. But my mom is a technophobe. I mean, when I say technophobe, I mean really technophobe. My mom still thinks Scott is on Mnet. It's like, Ma, there's no more Mnet. Loving is gone. Remember loving? There's no more loving, Ma. My mom is, she's stuck at like a certain age. But when she retired, she started going to church every second day. We're Roman Catholic in our home. And when I say Roman Catholic, I mean like devout Roman Catholic. I went to church so much, I'm on credit. I don't go anymore. I sent an email to God. I said, when I'm on overdraft, I'll come back. I don't just go anymore. So my mother goes every second day, and she's one of the ladies of the St. Anne's. You know them, they wear this purple stuff. She's been to the Vatican 3 times. Ask her, she'll tell you. So when she retired, I noticed she used to go to church carrying 4 books, 4 massive books. She had the King James Bible, the Holy Bible, the Catholic Bible. She had the hymn book and a 4th book. It's like, Ma, why do you need so many books? No, Danam, this one is for the hymns. This one is for the Father Scriptures. I said, all right, Ma, all right. So I bought my mom, as you do, an iPad. My mom had a knee surgery, which means she hobbles when she walks. And she's got a bit of an arched back, and she uses a stick. So I want you to picture the scene. So she goes to church, she hobbles along with the stick, and she's got an iPad. The problem now is my data costs are through the roof. So I said, Ma, how was church? She says, woo, it was amazing. I said, why? She says, you know the other ladies, they're always tenning. I said, and you? She says, me? I bookmark and I swipe. Great, right? More, I'm done, I promise. Law number 3, vision excites. If you want your customers to get excited about what you're doing for them, about what the business can deliver for them, give them a vision of what it looks like. You know, numbers are great. We're going to help you grow this by 10% or that by 15%. But often it goes over people's ears. What they really want to hear is what is the vision of what it is when it's done and achieved? What does it actually look like? And this is actually interesting to see. In all organizations, you'll find this thing called competing values. At the top is where you find the good people of HR. Anyone here from HR, by the way? I know we're talking to the distribution side. Anyone here from HR? No one? You? Hi. Stand up, let them give you a round of applause. Please, you must. No one here knows what you do. Isn't it interesting? Like, no one knows. What does HR do? Not sure. It's payroll. I'm kidding. HR says, guys, let's collaborate. Let's work together. Kumbaya, my lord. Kumbaya. Got HR, we're losing market share. They said, yeah, we need a team building. As HR says this, who walks in? Operations, usually distribution. They go, no, Oaks, listen. We need to be competitive. We've got to do things fast. We've got to get to the customer quickly, which means if the Oak doesn't deliver, I fire him. Don't tell me develop people nonsense kumbaya. Okay. If you don't like it, I'll meet you at the CCMI. And as they say that, walk in my favorite department, sales. and marketing. How do you know somebody works in sales or marketing? They're never at the office on a Friday past 12 o'clock. They're always in off-site client meetings. Fantastic. What is that? No idea. It's at the Dross. Love sales and marketing, right? Sales goes on conferences. Guys, we need to do new stuff. We need to break the mold. And then finance says, why? Sales goes, why? Because they may take our lives, but never our freedom. What? And a sales says this, walk in my favorite department, the only departments everybody agrees we hate. Finance, risk, legal, compliance. Or as we know them more commonly, the ones who always say, no. Yeah, see? And they go, no, listen. We've got a set of standard operating processes, all right? The law is the law. It says the customer's got to fill in line number 34 in the application form and tick the box. I don't care if the customer doesn't like it. That's what you have to do, all right? Thank you very much. Thank you. Very good. Why is this important? Because it turns out to build a great team and a great organization, you actually need all four of these. If you're having a fight internally in the business and the team, you should be having it. It's important. It must happen. You must be driving towards it. That is the only way you ensure that you build a great team. And then the fourth and final law is to lead by the business case. Lead by the business case. What's that mean? It's important to remember that all of us here are individuals and human beings. All of us come from a particular way of seeing the world. We're all socialized to see things a certain way. And what happens is we bring that with us to work. So, Mo, you guys remember Fees Must Fall? Yeah? So 2 years ago when the Fees Must Fall marches were happening, I went to show solidarity with some of the learners. And I marched with them from Pretoria University to the union buildings. It's very long. As you can tell, my complexion hasn't recovered from it. But I went and, you do the right thing. And whilst we were marching, there was a young fellow who came and chatted to me. Hey, I love your work. I said, humbled. And he said to me, great. Can we take a selfie? I said, no, we don't take selfies. This is a march. We're sweating. This is umzabalazo, And he said, he introduced himself and he said, this is what I do, or this is what I'd like to do, etc. He had an interesting problem. He's finished his degree, hasn't yet gotten the paper because he hasn't paid his third-year fees. And he's supposed to do his CTA, which he can't do until he gets his degree. He can't get the degree because he can't afford to pay for it. He can't pay for it because he doesn't have a job. No one will hire him because he doesn't have the degree. So he's in this circular state of nothingness. So he says, this is my state. Would you pay for my degree? I said, absolutely not. I don't believe in charity. But we put out an internship in the company. You can come and be an intern. We'll pay you. And if you want to save money and pay, that's on you. He says, great. Comes and joins the firm as an intern. What does he do? Effectively, he fetches my prints, makes me tea. What interns do. But I said to him, if you come into the firm and spend some time with us, I promise you two things. Number one, I will introduce you and expose you to things you otherwise would not have seen. And number two, I will accelerate your work readiness by 10 years. Deal? Deal. Young guy, Nkosinati, this high. So he comes into the firm, he comes into meetings, he sits down, he has a little notepad, he sits and he just keeps quiet. He says nothing. When I look at him, he knows if I look at him and wink, means I need tea. My sugar's running low. Yeah? Executive. So, as luck would have it, we're sitting in a meeting. We'd made a particular investment in a company based in Cape Town, and we had a very specific problem with this company. And the problem was, we invested in it and were sold a certain story by management, and that story has since not been the case. We can't get rid of management because we've been through 2 separate capital raisings, and we didn't participate in the capital raisings because we no longer trusted management, and we're diluted down from 64 to 18%. Big problem. However, we still own the stock. So what do? So we're sitting in the meeting having a conversation, me and my 2 business partners, and then comes this little voice from the back. He says, you guys know there's a way of doing this. I said, what is it? He says, there is a weighted average of votes that's actually based on risk, not shareholding. What are you talking about? 15 years in corporate finance, I've never heard this before. He says, that's how Christo Visa is the largest shareholder block in Pepco, but he only owns 13% of Pepco. It's because he invested the earliest, and so the memorandum of incorporation, the founding documents of the company say his votes are based on when he invested, not how much he owns. He took the largest risk. Fascinating. Now, what do we need to do that? He says you need 60% of the board to approve it. Really? 3 of us in the meeting, all 3 of us sit in a 5-man board. This is the 60%. So we log the papers at the SIPC. Papers come back, we notify the other shareholders, we change the structure, we vote, we get rid of the management, put in a new management, the business is now profitable and generating cash flows and making money. But my point here is this. When he made the suggestion, let me be honest, there was a part of me that thought, this little boy, who's he? What's this about? It is. Because I thought, he doesn't even have his degree yet, and he's sitting in a meeting now telling us how things should be done. And then I realized that I have my own biases that I myself have to unlearn. That actually, rather than adjudicate his opinion on the base of from whom it is coming, I should adjudicate it on whether or not it holds on a business case, leading by the business case. I hope I've shared some ideas that you've enjoyed. I've thoroughly extended my time, and I apologize to the team for having put them in a precarious position. But in my business, we call it value for money. And yeah, I'm earning overtime. I'm on a minute, every minute now. It's 10,000 a minute. And for those of you who were taking notes, and there were quite a few of you, I'm very happy to leave a full copy of the presentation with the team. I really am. There's only one small condition. You've seen me reference other people's work, so the competing values framework I shared with you earlier. I will share the full presentation, and you can have it and do with it what you will. If there's parts of it that you disagree, I love people who send us feedback and say, I like this, I don't like that, or I don't agree here. The only thing I would ask is if you share it with third parties, share it in its full form. If you cut it and splice it, effectively what you're making me do is infringe on other people's IP, right? But that said, I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. I know that Nicholas is speaking here tomorrow, so I won't be here by then, but I hope you tell him hello from me and tell him to please pay some dividends now. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your conference.